the desert of the real.
Welcome to the Desert of the Real. I am your host, Ryan Hudson. And join with me, as always, is your co-host,
Jason Dietz.
The Gray. The Desert of the This is
That's a good one.
The Desert of the Real is a movie podcast where I forced Jason to watch big blockbuster movies he's refused to watch because he did not think they're worth his time. We have a brand new season among us. Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Wasn't worth my time. Right.
We are two English language arts high school teachers with graduate degrees, and we attempt to use our academic training to dig deeply into movies. We explore the creativity, philosophy, film studies, and ethics in our film and push you, the listener, to think critically about your entertainment. We always want to start off and saying thank you for joining us.
Yes.
We know you are excited to hear Lord of the Rings, starting with the Hobbit films.
I'm sure they're very excited.
Jason is a self-proclaimed not only hater of Lord of the Rings, but also a hater of the books Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
So if you are here to hear why and what is his argument, which is silly.
I actually don't mind the book The Hobbit.
Oh, well, it's a good thing we have 3 movies about it.
I do mind that. Like, I could read The Hobbit quicker than I could watch the movies.
That's a good challenge.
That's
actually
silly.
Well, I couldn't, but you probably could.
Maybe.
Thanks for being here. It means a lot that you take the time out of your life to listen to us talk and hopefully bring something to the table. Complain is going to be a big one for this series, I think.
I'm pretty sure it is. Because I'm ready to start complaining right now.
All right. Well, okay. Before we get to your nonsense,
okay,
I have some nonsense to talk about.
Let's just admit at the outset, this movie is dumb. Can we just start on that? Maybe the dumbness that I think is the dumbness is different than the dumbness that you think is dumbness.
I don't think so, but maybe.
Okay, but we can start on the common ground.
Okay.
This is a dumb movie. This is dumb.
Here is what's dumb about it.
Okay.
It's that there are 3...
Yes.
This is a trilogy.
Right.
I think... Okay.
Among other things, but yeah.
No one is going to attempt to argue that these are better or on par with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which you are not a fan of, which is what we're going to correct with that series when we get there. I mean, I think it's time for you to come around to those. But you've never seen...
it may be.
You've never seen these movies. No. And we've talked with you and with some coworkers or like other teachers that no one's pining for the Hobbit movies.
Right.
Like they're misunderstood or something.
Right.
They fans of Lord of the Rings agree these movies exist.
Yes.
And they are what
Here
they are. And
imagine they were really expensive to make, and that's silly.
I don't know how expensive. We should look it up.
I don't either.
They
didn't look that good for however much they spent on it.
There's a couple reasons for that.
Oh.
There's a couple reasons for that, which we'll get into here in just a second. But now we have, since this, like, it's not like the prequel trilogy for Star Wars, because the prequels have fans that grew up with those and are like, yes, the prequels are not just as good, but maybe better than the other ones. Like, you will get fans like that for Star Wars.
Those people are silly.
I don't think that's going to happen for the Hobbit trilogy. There's a couple issues. I mean, some things behind the scenes, production-wise, and also just the fact of what the Hobbit is. Like, literally what the Hobbit story is. Brings some issues.
Oh, does it?
I think so.
Like what?
Well, like a huge problem with these movies, like all 3 of them are going to be, there are so many dwarfs.
Okay.
There are 13 dwarfs.
Oh.
You know what I mean?
Because they're trying to one-up like Snow White or something.
Yeah, that's what Tolkien had in mind. He's like, I'll show you, Disney. In my story, there are more dwarfs.
Wait, so why is that a problem?
Because
keeping track of
like,
names?
like basically, there's Thorin Oakenshield, the leader. He's Thorin Oakenshield, the leader, you know?
Right.
And then you maybe get to know 3 of the other ones. The rest kind of just are there. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's a problem story-wise. Like, no filmmaker would be like, I want 12 of these guys. You know what I mean?
You gotta have background characters.
You do.
You can't just be like, we're going on a quest with 4 people.
You could, maybe.
No, of course you can't. We have to have bigger and more, better,
You're right.
longer.
But you also can't mess with Tolkien's word. Like, The Hobbit has that many dwarfs, so the movie has this many dwarfs.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Fair enough.
And the stuff that happens in these 3 movies largely happens because it's in the book The Hobbit. So, that being said, now they've split up into 3, which wasn't originally the plan. And now you need a beginning, middle, and end, like rising action, climax, falling action, denouement, in 3 movies that didn't really have that in its source material.
Right.
That's
so each movie needs its own
Yeah.
dramatic arc, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that was kind of artificially
Yes.
inserted here.
Yes, and you haven't even... There are characters in the next few movies that are not in the books to also kind of fill in some of those holes.
Naughty.
But I think it's a double-edged sword. Like, coming right off the bat, I think if you read the book The Hobbit now, having seen the movies, you're like, yeah, literally every single thing in this book is in the movie. Even small details, like the stone giants and stuff.
Right.
That's in the book. And so, on one hand, I think you gotta commemorate this movie, or all the movies really, being like, everything in the book is in the movie.
Faithful.
It's faithful, like, you get it all. But at the same time, it's like, well, how do you turn it into a story worth, like, sitting down and watching? Like, for 3 movies, you have to add some stuff. And I think, to its credit, that they try to make it more is commendable.
So
It's
this
better.
is a reverse case of what you were talking about with some of the Star Wars stuff. Is
Yeah.
there movies that should have been a show? This would have worked much better as a 8-part show rather than a 3-movie series kind of thing.
Well, I think so because the book is very, it's very vignette or
Right.
vignette. I mean,
Episodic.
it's like the dwarfs and Bilbo do this,
Right.
and then they do this,
And then they walk
they
for
do
30
this.
pages across the field and do
Okay,
this.
I know that's the joke, but that's
It
not
is
true
not.
for The Hobbit. I've read The Hobbit.
That is true.
I have not read the other ones. Like I need to read the Lord of the Rings proper books.
Not really.
But here's what maybe some people might not know: how many years removed these books were. So The Hobbit came out originally 1937, but the Lord of the Rings didn't come out until 1954. Like almost
20 years
15.
later.
Yeah, like I saw one YouTube video using Star Wars as an example. You wouldn't say Solo, a Star Wars story, it's not a sequel to the prequels. You know what I mean? Because
Yes.
new characters, everything's different about it. The Lord of the Rings is not a continuation necessarily of The Hobbit. It's just a story in the world that takes place later. As opposed to, and that's what, but the movie,
Wait, isn't Bilbo a part of it?
yeah, but Bilbo's not the main character of The Lord of the Rings.
Right.
Frodo is.
Right.
But what this movie, and what you'll see in the next 2, is how they're trying to make it more sequel-y. Like, oh, this stuff is going to be setting up next franchise things. Even though, like, it came out afterwards. So it's doing reverse work. But the book was not written that way.
Right.
Like, famously, the ring Bilbo finds was not, like, the one ring. It was just a ring that turns you invisible. So he went back later on and retroactively said that this is, like, the ring, this is who Gollum is, and he made it work and stuff. And now we see the movie doing that differently for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is kind of interesting. We'll say it's interesting. You know, I'm not going to say it's good or whatever.
Sucks.
Okay, here's some behind-the-scenes stuff you didn't know.
All right.
Summed up. So originally, the original pitch for the Lord of the Rings movies, way back in like the 90s and stuff, was a Hobbit movie, and then turning the Lord of the Rings trilogy into 2 movies. Probably super condensing Fellowship, and then, 2 Towers and Return of the King.
That sounds ideal. That's what they should have done.
But Peter Jackson, for whatever reasons, it gets into a rights dispute, like who owns
With Tolkien?
Well, the Tolkien estate has to okay everything.
Okay.
But because of weird legal things, it turns out The Hobbit was owned by a separate company. So the reason Peter Jackson didn't even touch The Hobbit back in the day, just the Fellowship trilogy, is because New Line Cinema got the rights to those movies.
Oh.
And I think it's MGM that had it. Or the rights would be renewed in like 2007 or whatever. So Hobbit was off the table, but then that forced him to, like, I'll just make each book its own movie. And then we got the best trilogy of all time, which we'll get to. So fast forward, now it's like, you know what? Let's make the Hobbit movies. And MGM, who was not a part of the original movies, it's like, I want my slice of this pie type of thing. And so the new deals were made. And know who the director was going to be for The Hobbit? Guillermo del Toro.
Oh, really?
Which...
that would have been much better.
Yeah, and even Peter Jackson, the director of all of these, agreed. Like, he had a vision. It was going to be cool. It was going to be awesome. So let me tell you.
Oh.
Like, this is kind of things.
That was a good setup you just did.
Things summed up. So it came to, like, because of the multiple companies that own the rights to The Hobbit. Like, you know what? Peter Jackson needs to be a producer. Like, fine. That's fine. And so he was just going to produce it. Guillermo was going to direct it. And he worked on it for like 2 years. There was like concept art you can watch. There's like drawings. There's like costumes stuff. But then MGM was super bankrupt around this time. So they basically forced Guillermo out of the picture. He's like, you can either wait this out for who knows how long, or the other studio can step in and fix it, but you have to be out. He was basically forced out, essentially.
That's dumb.
It is dumb. It's dumb. But because of legal things, like, MGM still is producing this movie. Like, all right, Peter Jackson, now you are in the director's chair, and usually you have a couple years.
Is that like a twofer? Like, what is why?
It was part of...
Is that better than...
It was, for whatever reason, like...
Oh, we don't know why.
I think there are...
Why Del Toro had to go out?
It's because of New Line Cinema, I think. Like, the company that made Lord of the Rings. But Guillermo has... There's a comment I saw him say, it wasn't just one person or one studio. It was a whole amalgamy of where the money was coming from and expectations, basically. So he stepped down. He is a producer for at least this one. I don't know if he produces all 3. Because, like, they gave Peter no prep time. He's like, we need this now because we need money now, type of thing. So part of the reason the effects are questionable are because Peter did not have time like he had with Lord of the Rings. They scrapped all of Guillermo del Toro's stuff, and it's like, now here you go. But they had, like, the original people from the old movies, like costume designers, producers, writers. They are just basically doing it with none of that prep time. The Hobbits, they are what they are. I think this is the best one.
Oh, dear.
But I think, yeah, the third one, which is called The Battle of the Five Armies, is the worst one. It came out, I guess, a year after this, or a couple years after, where Peter Jackson, he's just talking about how he literally does not know what to do with the third one. He says it felt like putting trains on the track as the train was moving.
Wow.
And that's largely because he just didn't have time for all of this. Anyway, so this movie was going to be 2 movies at first. Just part 1, part 2. But then Peter Jackson's like, yeah, but I'm filming so much. We need a third movie. So even though at the time he didn't know how to fill it up, he's like, we need all of this footage to be in just because it's...
Because he filmed it?
Because he filmed it and he loved it and it's in the book and all that stuff.
Ugh. Great.
So that's kind of where The Hobbit is.
That's good to know, I guess. There's a reason for it.
Yeah.
At the very least.
I said, so something I learned going into this movie this time is just, you always hear Tolkien is like the grandfather of fantasy.
Yeah.
And I didn't fully understand or at least appreciate why until that research, where traditionally for a lot of fantasy novels in the past, it's a character going into a fantasy world like Alice in Wonderland or maybe Peter Pan or Wizard of Oz or something, but then they come back to the real world. Lord of the Rings, I don't know if this is the first, but it's definitely the most influential, where it's like, this is the world. There is no world out of this. So there's a history of these characters. There's a history of these fantasy things. Like even like Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it's characters going into fantasy.
Right.
But Lord of the Rings, it's that real world does not exist. It's just the fantasy world.
So they wrote. Did you know they wrote those simultaneously?
I knew they were
Tolkien
best friends, and they influenced each other a lot.
So yeah, the Chronicles of Narnia and this were kind of created at the same time. They bounced ideas off each other, and
See, that's cool.
that is cool.
Yeah.
Lewis is a much better writer than Tolkien.
Let's get into it right now.
We can, or yeah. We can
I mean,
debate it right
we
now.
have a lot of Lord of the Rings, but I think
We
you
do.
should tell our listeners, what is your deal with Tolkien?
What is my deal?
Yeah, why don't you like him?
Because he's not that good of a writer. That's all. I mean, obviously he is very creative.
Yeah.
But creativity and effective storytelling and character creation don't necessarily all happen at the same time. So, creatively, yes. I don't even know where literature of the second half of the 20th century would be without Tolkien. Like, there's no overstating how important he was as a creative genius.
Yeah.
But as a writer, he's not that good. His prose is very dry.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of just dragging. And you've read, even in The Hobbit, there's a lot of dragging. It drags. And it gets worse with, the other 3 books. So, I mean, that's my issue.
Yeah.
If we're going to look at Tolkien as a great writer, we can't.
Okay.
If we're going to look at Tolkien as a genius in terms of a creative vision, absolutely. It's like J.J. Abrams. Like, he's got the beautiful big set pieces, and he's great at that. But he's not great at fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Same thing here. Tolkien is amazing. Like, world creator, fantastic. All of the dwarves and elves and orcs, and that's all standard fare now for fantasy. A lot of that came out of Tolkien's brain.
Yeah.
Middle Earth is brilliant. Like, the history of it and all of that is brilliant. But as a writer, as a storyteller, I don't think it's that enjoyable to read.
I even though I can't defend because I haven't read the books, I feel like most people would disagree with that statement. I love the soundbite though of J.J. Abrams is just like Tolkien.
You can hold on to that. But okay, so I mean, we can make a direct comparison between C.S. Lewis's storytelling and Tolkien's storytelling. There's really no contest as to who is the better storyteller. It's not. There's no. They're not even comparable in terms of storytelling. In terms of creativity, yeah, we could put them head to head. I would maybe even say that Tolkien's world is more creative than the world of Narnia. But in terms of I give a crapness about these characters.
Yeah.
It's not even remotely close.
Yeah.
I don't really care about any of the characters in Tolkien's writing. Maybe Bilbo, but there's just not there's no arc to any of them. Bilbo doesn't go home really any different than when he left. He goes, if you remember the end of The Hobbit, he just goes back and slots himself right back into his little hovel and lives life.
Okay. You're true. There's true.
No change there.
But I guess
Smaug's dead. I guess that's a change.
Spoilers. I guess The Hobbit or the Lord of the Rings movies would suggest Bilbo is different than the other hobbits.
Yeah, but just nominally so. He's the only one that went on an adventure. That's it. Anyhow, I realize that my position is probably not a popular position. I don't really care.
I know, and here's the thing. That's fine. I'm like the Hobbit movies. I told you just before we recorded, it's a necessary evil because they exist, and have this podcast. But
we've got magnificent fantasy authors coming out of Tolkien.
Yeah.
So again, I am not suggesting in any way that Tolkien is not a pivotal, crucial component of literature generally, but especially of fantasy literature. Yeah. There is no fantasy literature without Tolkien.
Okay, that's fair.
But he's just not the best. He's not even, top tier, I would say.
Yeah.
Immediately after him, we've got, I don't know how much fantasy you've read, but David Eddings, in the, I don't remember when he wrote, 60s and 70s, his world building is easily comparable to Tolkien. And I had a crush on one of his characters.
Oh, really?
A hardcore
crush. What's his series?
The Belgariad and the Malorian, I think.
I don't even know those.
He's got, if you're into, and listener, also, if you're into fantasy, I would strongly suggest reading David Eddings. Because he's a much better character creator. But again, we can't have David Eddings without J.R.R. Tolkien.
That's one franchise?
That's
two.
The Belgariad is 5 books. The Malorian is 5 books. And then there's some really phenomenal, I don't know what the literary version of a biopic is, but there's some phenomenal biopic books for 2 of the main sorcerer characters.
Yeah.
So we got Tolkien. I would say Eddings is the best of the second generation fantasy, and then we've got I don't think anyone is ever going to hold a candle to Brandon Sanderson. He is magnificent author.
I've read Brandon Sanderson,
and so we've got Tolkien kind of plants the seeds, creates the genre, and makes all of this other possible. Not taking any of that away. I'm repeating myself now, but. In terms of memorable characters and characters you actually care about, I feel like there are much better writers of fantasy.
And that's fair.
Yeah.
And you're right. With I don't care about any of the dwarves except for Thorin Oakenshield.
I don't really care about him either because he's just like this.
Anyhow.
Okay, great. I care about him and I care about Bilbo. Kind of.
I think, okay.
I relate a lot to Bilbo.
Yeah.
I'm a hobbit at heart, I think.
Well, here's the thing. I even have in my notes, poor Bilbo, because he can't say no. All these dwarves are coming into his house, eating all his food.
That scene was marvelous.
Yeah. I
loved the first maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes of this movie. I'm like, oh, this is not that bad. This is clever.
And even before the dwarves come with Gandalf, that's the Tolkien writing literally.
Right.
But it's Gandalf is me. All of that is, I think. And there is a point. I don't know where it is, but sometime after, when the adventure begins, there's a pacing issue. This movie's not perfect.
Okay, so one of the biggest problems I had with this was, I guess it's pacing. It's just the length of the things
Yeah.
that happen.
And I watched the extended edition.
Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine. So like when the horses get taken by the rock,
The trolls.
are they trolls?
Yeah.
The first 3 little goobers that turn to stone, they're
Yeah.
trolls.
Those are trolls.
Yeah, okay, so great. And there's peril, whatever. But that scene goes on and on and on and on. And like I get it. We got it.
Yeah.
Cut it. So we're dealing with a fantasy world. And so a lot of the objections that I make to other movies, I'm going to just set aside because stupid crap is going to happen.
Yeah.
Inexplicable, like physically impossible stuff.
Name one.
No, I get it. I get that those things are going to happen, so I'm not going to say anything.
What?
I'm not going to say anything about them. However, I am going to we're going to have a segment like logical inconsistencies of the real.
Okay.
So if these trolls are interested and they've survived this long, they're not going to be sitting there in the shadow of a rock when the sun is literally like you split the rock and the sun is there. That's not going to happen. They're going to be long gone at that point because they know the sun's coming up and they know that I don't know, how long would it take for the sun to get up over the rock that he splits? 10 minutes maybe? No. We can be better than that.
Can I say something about that scene though?
You can.
I think this is an improvement than the book. In the movie, it's Bilbo stalling.
Sure.
And in the book, unless I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. In the book, it's Gandalf's disembodied voice from the distance distracting them.
Okay.
And as a movie, as a story, it's better that Bilbo, like he's
Right.
earning his place as the party.
That's true.
I guess the argument with the troll thing, it's like the sun was behind the rock and now the rock is split in half where...
Right, I understand it, but they're not going to be cutting it that close.
Maybe.
If that's the one weakness, they're not going to be cutting it that close. But that's not really a big deal to me.
Yeah.
The big deal to me is how like it goes on and on and on and on and like we got it. Mm-hmm. It's peril. Uh-huh. They're in danger. We got it.
Okay. Yeah, I know.
Let's move
that's
on.
Fair.
And then like I don't remember what the next peril. Oh, the rock giants. That was ridiculous. Like there's no way that those people are not dead.
I mean,
any of them.
Yeah.
That's logically impossible. No way. Like the rock giants walking across, they've got this little ledge that's barely wider than their feet. The rock giant's moving his leg all over, and they're just gonna be no. That's lazy. That's dumb. Knock it off.
I feel like they should have.
And the whole fight is like, okay.
Wait,
we got it.
Which fight?
The rock giants. We got it. It's cool.
Yeah.
Great. It's still going. Oh, okay. We're still watching this. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, there they are still.
Yeah.
I mean, this would have maybe potentially been an enjoyable movie.
Yeah.
If they just took an hour out of it, and it could be easily done. Like the ridiculous, what was the one? The goblin.
And you didn't even see the singing.
That is so long. So long.
It's longer in the extended.
Legit,
he sings like a song to them in the extended edition.
Man. That is ridiculous.
I was surprised by something this viewing.
Okay.
When these movies came out, one of the main criticisms was like an overuse of CGI. Sure. And it's just because like the original movies, all the orcs are makeup, costumes.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, too much CGI. Give us the practical things. It's strange now watching this. This is 2012. They look incredible. Like the creatures, the CGI stuff.
Sure.
I couldn't help but kind of really like the goblin escape scene because it's like a video game because you have to see all 12 of them. You have to see everyone at all times, Yeah. So it's like a side scroller, but at the same time, I couldn't believe it because at first I was like, yeah, this is one of the stuff would have been better practical or like in the Lord of the Rings days. But I'm like, But this stuff is kind of fun. They got a ladder, knock off all of these guys, make a bridge, knock off. This whole entire thing is swinging with all of them. I was like, this is here's a big giant boulder. Let's push the boulder. Once again, you can see everything, all these wide shots. I was like, it's radically different than the Lord of the Rings movies we will be getting. It's own thing, and I'm like, wow, I kind of like the way this is. Specifically that sequence. I was having like a hoot and a half.
Yeah. I'm glad you liked it. I did not at all.
That's fair. I mean,
like the end of it is completely ridiculous. So all they had to do to break literally any of those things was toss a guy on it or whatever, and then the bridge disintegrates and everyone's falling. Okay, great. That's fine. And then their little chunk of the bridge
perfectly lands.
It grinds down the entire mountain.
See, it's kind of fun. I don't know.
No, that's the logical inconsistency of the reel. No, you cannot do that.
It's just crazy.
You can't have this like little thing. Oh, this little rock fell on it, and the bridge collapses on one end.
Yeah.
And then no.
I don't know.
And that thing, legit, that had to have been 25 minutes that they're like down there with the goblins and all of the crap going on. No. So there, we could cut out that and make that like 5 minutes long. We cut out about 10 minutes of the goblins or no, what are they? The trolls. And maybe 5 minutes of the rock giants bashing on each other. There's a lot of room here. We could make this a watchable movie.
Did you see the movie? It's called Black Klansman.
Yes, I love that movie. Great movie.
There's the guy who plays the head. The actor who plays that guy, Topher Grace. He said that he was such in like a dark place filming that movie, being that guy, that in his spare time he edited the Hobbit trilogy into one movie.
Oh wow!
I think it's just for him. I think it's just for his benefit.
That'd be a good release. I would watch that maybe.
Okay, so I have a couple things that I love actually.
Okay, let's do stuff.
I love the singing, not the goblin song that you didn't even see. I love the bent the knives, bend the forks. That's good. That's Tolkien.
That's like Mary Poppins crap.
Oh my.
I mean, I know Tolkien
like
has a lot
there's
of poetry.
songs all over those books.
Right.
They,
I would be okay with it if that wasn't just in the exposition in the first 20 minutes. If like his poetry showed up periodically throughout, but it didn't.
Yeah, Tolkien likes his poetry.
Yeah, he does.
And
he's actually not a bad poet.
And then the Misty Mountains song I love, and it becomes the main theme of these movies. The bum 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 ba da dum. That's instead of, because you don't want the Lord of the Rings theme.
No.
That's a fantastic score, I think.
Yeah.
You missed out another song the dwarves sing in Rivendell.
Oh, so they cut the songs.
Yeah.
Oh. That's, I think, a good call, but
yeah, I
should have cut them all.
Yeah, sure. I honestly wish there was more singing in the Lord of the Rings movies, because there's songs in those books that don't make it.
Yeah.
I love the game of riddles. That's like one of the highlights of the book.
Yeah.
And it's in this movie.
Yeah, that whole scene is almost flawless.
And it's kind of crazy how there's like 30 or 40 minutes after that scene, but it feels like that's climax.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because it's just Bilbo and Gollum, and it's exciting, and it's a lot of fun, because I mean, this is the only Gollum you get in these three movies, but
that sucks.
Yeah, like he's not in the rest of the books. He's not in the rest of the Hobbit book. Right. I mean, and it's just somehow it's as exciting as maybe more exciting than the big battle at the end. You know.
Yeah, that chunk, 30 minutes or whatever it was, is by far the best of this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gollum is the same guy that played Gollum
and he's
so good.
He looks incredible in this movie.
Yeah, he's so good at like just that like hair trigger switching. Yeah. Gollum is the best of this movie.
Yeah.
I agree.
He is a good part.
We got the dude from The Matrix showed up. I thought that was cool.
The dude from The Matrix?
Yeah, the bad guy from The Matrix is like the elf king or something.
Yeah.
He didn't...
Elrond?
I didn't buy him being an elf at all. I could only ever see him... Mr. Anderson.
Wow,
that's all I can ever see him.
That's so funny that you say that. Okay, here's some lore things I didn't know until the TV show came out. Because Tolkien wrote the Silmarillion, which is like basically the Old Testament for the Hobbit or the Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And there are things in there I just do not know that diehard fans will know and will be nitpicky. If you're listening to this, I'm sorry. I never realized until watching the Rings of Power TV show how the wizards worked in Lord of the Rings. As opposed to, say, like in Harry Potter, if you're a wizard, it's like exercise. You study, you can get better at magic.
Right.
But in Lord of the Rings, in Middle-earth, there's only 5 wizards and 5 wizards total.
Right.
And they're kind of like deities in a way where they're the gods of Middle-earth, and then there are the wizards underneath them. There's Gandalf, there's Sauron, there's Radagast the Brown, who's got bird poop on his face.
Yeah. It's like, can we not?
The actor, I don't know who he is, his name, but he's one of the doctors in Doctor Who.
Oh, that's where I've seen him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's 2 blue wizards, which I think to this day do not have names. They're just kind of there. You never see them. They're just there. And there's Gandalf. He's the gray. Sauron's the white because he's the top. And then there's Radagast the brown. They have different specialties or purposes, stuff like that. Right. But I think it's cool how it's radically different than we see wizards and other stuff. Like, you can't learn to be what Gandalf does. He's literally one of 5 beings that are like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew this. He said sarcastically, setting up his next statement. But Gandalf is a Christ-like character.
Oh?
I have a theological lens to view, kind of to counter an argument you haven't even made yet.
Okay.
The number of Deus Ex Machinas that are in this.
Yeah, a lot.
Again, I think in the how it should have ended, it's like, I'll save you in the last second like I always do. Or something.
Yeah, I wasn't even going to mention that because it's fantasy and whatever.
Yeah, and like in Star Wars,
although the very last one is really pretty annoying. But
oh yeah, but once again, that's literally what happens in the books. I know. Though. But this is how I am seeing it. If Tolkien, he's this Christian writer, and there's a lot of Christian themes in all of these movies. I see that like, oh, here we are in our journey. We have our Christ-like figure, Gandalf. He's got to leave for something. We are on our own. How are we going to do on our own? We think we can do it. Nope, we can't. The trolls will capture us. Yep. We did not get far on our own without our Christ-like figure. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's kind of like maybe reasoning, maybe Tolkien did it. Then the next time, the goblins. We left Rivendell, boom. And we're on our own. This time, we're choosing to be on our own. Guess what? We get captured. And you know what? He will save us, except we still need to fight our way out of this mess. He's not going to save every single problem. Yeah. I mean, it looks like it's nice and easy because it's a video game scene. Right. But arguably, they had to survive on their own. Right. You know what I mean? And then the last Deus Ex Machina is the Eagles. Right. But then you can argue they could have taken them to Misty or the Lonely Mountain.
That's one of my points.
But the Eagles are not a taxi service. This is a famous argument for all of these movies.
Like they're literally looking at the mountain.
Yeah, and that's really far away. They already flew who knows how far.
That was annoying. We could just skip 2 movies. Just drop them off over there.
Yeah, except for that's one of the main arguments for Lord of the Rings. Why don't they have the Eagles fly to Middle-earth? No, the Eagles do not do that.
You know what? They do that because they just did it. Anyhow.
Something like...
I wasn't actually going to mention that either.
But I was anticipating because in Rise of Skywalker, that was one of your main complaints.
Right.
And I was like, there. This is it. But if you look at it with the lens of theocracy, it's like, this is how Christ will save people.
He only does what we can't do for ourselves.
Yeah, sometimes, you got to do part of the work, whatever,
Right.
I was thinking maybe that's a good argument against it.
Yeah.
But it does happen 3 times.
It does happen 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess he's just really wants us to understand that message. Okay. So, we've already covered actually almost all of it. But
Good, because I have so much to talk about for some reason.
Do you?
I don't know
I
why.
can't imagine what it is. Okay, so my main problem with this isn't the long drawn out whatever. It's Jackson is trying to make every second of this movie majestic. Every second of this movie has to be like, what is the word? Like
cinematic, grandiose.
Cinematic, yes. Those words are good words. I like those words. Every moment of this. Yeah. And after, the first 30 minutes, I'm like, it can't be like that. Like, there's too many close-up of the eyes moments, and there's too many, like, the music, sure, is beautiful, whatever. But we can't have the oh no all the time. Not everything is oh no. We gotta have some downtime. We gotta have some. So, like, by about an hour in, I'm like, this is a parody. This is not like a actual dramatic movie. This is a parody of actual dramatic movies.
Well,
because it's too much. There's too much going on.
I think it's even worse for people who actually do like the Lord of the Rings movies.
Like, there's just too much pathos, too much danger, too many, significant looks at the camera or at other people. It's just, it's a melodrama in the worst sense of the word. And that's all. That's my main complaint with this is, we just gotta have some rest. Give us some non-pathos moments, but there aren't any.
I guess that's fair.
It's just constant pathos, one peril to the next. There's no moment. Like, I think literally the only downtime in the movie is when they get to, is it Rivendell? What is it? Arendelle?
Rivendell.
When they get there and they're like eating. That's it. Other than that, it's just peril to peril to peril to peril. Dramatic moments, dramatic looks, fighting, slow motion crap and all that, and that's, you can't do that.
I mean, that's fair.
You can't.
Can I say there are 2 moments of pathos I genuinely love?
Okay, you can say that.
There's 2 Gandalf lines I particularly love.
Okay,
it's the first one when he gives Bilbo his sword. And, Bilbo's all he is the everyman archetype. Right. When he gives Bilbo the sword, he says, true courage is about knowing not when to take life, but when to spare one. Which is a fantastic line.
That is a good line.
And what makes it even better is there is a moment in this movie where he chooses to spare life.
Right.
And what makes it so incredible is sparing that life has severe consequences later on, which you don't get to in The Hobbit because Smeagol's done basically. But, Bilbo doesn't want to. The first thing he kills is one of the wolves.
I called him Smeagol too in my notes.
Yeah, Gollum, Smeagol, Either.
Oh, they are the same?
Yeah.
Okay, because I wrote Smeagol and I'm like, wait, that's not right. It's Gollum.
Smeagol's the nice one, Gollum's the evil one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that just makes that moment and that idea thematically super interesting in context of the entire Lord of the Rings saga. Because if Gollum would be dead, that's a different series.
A whole different series of events.
But also, he spared a life, and that's a huge moment for Bilbo here.
Yeah, for sure.
My other thing that I love so much is when Galadriel, Galadriel, it's the one and only girl character in this whole thing.
Okay.
My daughter was watching it. She's 5.
I don't even know who she was. She was just some god person or something.
She's queen of the other elves over.
Oh,
anyway,
okay.
She's also one of the main characters in Rings of Power, which sets thousands of years before this even takes place. Because elves live for thousands of years. Anyway, in Rings of Power, they go Galadriel, like they say it all fancy. But Galadriel, she asks, "Why the Hobbit?" And Gandalf has this beautiful thing. And if this was the only pathos in the movie, it'd be worth it. But as you mentioned, there's already more.
Oh yeah.
Gandalf says, "Saruman believes it is only great power that can keep evil in check."
I wrote this one too.
But that is not what I have found. I have found it's the small things, the everyday folk that keeps the darkness at bay. Simple acts of kindness and love.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
I agree.
And that's one of the best quotes in all of these movies, Lord of the Rings included.
Yeah.
Because that's what that's what Bilbo represents.
Yeah.
Bilbo's not an adventurer. He stays in his cozy little house, worried about the everyday things, his garden. And I mean, you're right about the growth thing overall, but like what we see him like being more and more adventurous, kind of, but still being true to Bilbo.
Yeah.
Like the reason the goblins didn't take him is because he could just duck down and they didn't even notice him.
Right.
He literally he's not a big warrior. He's just every
man.
And that's one of the best lessons this movie could teach anyone.
Yeah.
Like, we teach high school. We see all sorts of different types of kids. And not every kid's going to be the star quarterback or student council. But every kid could be like helping your neighbor.
Right.
Doing the kind things for each other. In the end, I agree with Gandalf. The more important stuff anyway. Are you kind to someone else?
Yep.
I love that.
I do too. That was actually my philosophy.
Oh, well,
of the real thing.
What else can we say about it?
Well, I mean, it's just like we've presented that idea on this podcast a number of times.
Yeah.
Just wherever you are, whatever your sphere is, whatever your talent set is, use it and do good with it. Yeah. And so I love that line also. I think that's the only line that I wrote down.
That's fair.
But yeah, it's beautiful. Like, I guess the next step of that is the idea that we can rise from where we're at. Mm-hmm. So Bilbo definitely rises. He goes from being, a hobbit in his house to an adventurer, to a thief, to a hero, and he's definitely rising. Is he still a small little dude that wants to be home in his house? Absolutely. But that doesn't limit his ability to be a hero, to stand in the face of this. What are those called? They're not dire wolves.
Warg wolves?
Whatever, sure. Stand between the warg wolf and Thorin?
Thorin Oakenshield.
That doesn't, just because he's little, just because he's never held a sword, that doesn't mean he can't stand there. And do the best that he can, even in the face of that. So I admit that pathos and that message is dear to me as well.
Yeah,
like, that's something I believe very strongly in. The one ant, the idea that one ant can rise up against Hopper, and lead and grow and change the world.
And I guess to build on that, I counted there's 3 times Bilbo could have refused the call.
Yeah.
The initial one, he's running, I'm off on an adventure. He could have stayed home.
Yeah, for sure.
At Rivendell, Elrond says, you can stay if you want. He could have stayed in Rivendell. Right. And then he was about to leave. He's trying to leave, then the goblin thing happened. At the end, when he meets up with the dwarves, he could have
just kept the ring
on and left.
Yeah.
But 3 times he chooses to keep going to do it, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. Oh, one question. How does everyone know who everyone else is?
That's I kind of noticed that.
There's no Facebook or Twitter or anything.
They only know who the kings are, I guess.
But how? Like they don't even who are you? It's like
they meet up
it's you. Even that fat guy in the basement, whatever.
The Goblin King.
The Goblin King. He's like, oh, I know. How in the heck does he know? Just looking at this dirty, raggedy-looking dwarf that's the king of the dwarves.
I don't know. I kind of like that though.
I mean, it's fine. It occurred to me, like, how on earth do they know? Anyhow. Go ahead.
I don't know. I do kind of like that though. Even the Goblin King knows who Thorin is.
Yeah.
He's like,
It's
you're a
fine.
king without a mountain and without a people. You're just a god. Like, I don't know. It's kind of
It's just
fantasy.
I guess.
Yeah. But there's a funny death. Gandalf cuts off a head of a goblin.
Oh yeah.
And it stays in place. And then he knocks it over with his staff. That's fun. That's fun.
It's the same thing they always do in swashbuckling movies with candlesticks. Like they go whoosh, and the candle's just there, and then they knock over the top of the candle.
It's kind of funny in The Legend of Zorro.
Yeah, I like those kind of movies.
He knocks it over.
Yeah.
I have film studies of the real.
Beautiful.
Because this movie has some cinematic history to it.
Cool.
Dr. Dietz, do you know how many frames per second is in the typical movie?
33?
No.
Okay.
It's too much.
Oh, 12.
20,
6.
24 frames per second is the industry standard. There are always exceptions to this rule.
Sure.
But basically, the human visual system can process 10 to 12 images per second and perceive them individually. That's what we get the illusion of movement.
Right.
But when it's double 12, 24, it's just smooth and it looks good.
Right.
Which, something that is really cool, which doesn't happen anymore because we have digital projectors. But back in the day, my childhood and your childhood, if you saw a movie in theaters with a projector and reel, technically you're sitting in the film half the time in complete darkness. But because it's just going 24 frames a second, we don't see the darkness. But technically it's there because of the... Isn't that kind of cool?
That is kind of cool.
So this movie was not shot 24 frames per second. It's not the first movie. In fact, there are movies going back into the 90s. But this movie was shot on double that.
48?
48 frames per second. So, what's interesting is, at the time, not every theater could do that. You need like a specific type of projector that can do that. But we also kind of just have to credit George Lucas for some of this stuff. Like, there's an incredible documentary series about ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, kind of going over making the old Star Wars, and then they just came out with season 2, which I watched, of going over the prequels. And as much the prequel Star Wars, what they are, George Lucas literally spearheaded a lot of stuff, including the CGI that Lord of the Rings used, and now the Hobbits use, and that everything uses now. But like George Lucas literally had to write IMAX projectors, like, this is how to do this. And now we don't even think about it because it's all digital and stuff. So not every movie is shot in 48 frames per second. I believe these 3 movies were, if you want a sense of what it looked like, if you have a good enough computer, you can watch the trailer on the highest quality, and it gives you an impression. But the thing is, it's weird looking. It's off-putting because more frames means more detail.
Right.
So people literally would complain when this movie came out, it didn't look right, type of thing. And it's kind of a big reason why most movies don't do it.
Because it looks hyper real.
It looks too real.
Right.
But then you have like James Cameron saying it's just going to be the future. We're all going to do this eventually. But James Cameron's also crazy with cameras and technology. The second Avatar is another movie that was shot in, let me double check. Yeah, in 48 frames per second. However, there are 2 movies that's not 48 frames. It's not even twice that. Ang Lee, the guy who directed the first Hulk movie that we didn't even watch, who did Life of Pi and stuff, he's made 2 movies that were shot on 120 frames per second. Wow. And there's only like 3 or 4 projectors in the country that could even project that many frames per second. The first movie, a movie I guarantee you've never heard, it's called Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk.
You're right. I've never seen that.
Which has an insane cast if you look up the cast. But it's like literally so much detail that they had to paint and repaint the sets behind actors. The makeup had to be like super precise. It couldn't be like normal makeup because you could just see it so well.
Wow.
And then he made a movie, The Gemini Man, and Will Smith.
Yeah, and like a CGI Will Smith.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not good.
Also, and I saw that in our local theater. Our local theater can have 48 frames per second. And, you know, I was like, being the film nerd I was, like, I can see the difference. But after a while, it's like, it doesn't matter anymore. Right. But 120, I mean, those lucky people in California and LA and wherever else, they got to see it, I guess. But there's a good chance your TV can't do that.
Yeah.
So this movie and these three movies have like this little asterisk of the frames per second film history stuff. There's not a lot of movies that do this, mostly because you don't really need to. I feel like I was listening to the podcast Blank Check, and they were talking about this guy who did the special effects for like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and how his like passion project was like, oh, we need the frames per second, my personal project that, you know, once again, no one really knows or doesn't really matter because it's either awful or it just, you can't watch it type of stuff. But every now and then we get these Ang Lees and guys like, we need to change the frames per second, and it doesn't ultimately matter because our eyes 24 is just kind of fine with us. It's just fine with everyone type of thing. I thought maybe there could be some ethical stuff or maybe philosophy stuff when Thor and Oakenshield, you have to say the whole name every time.
Okay.
He tells Gandalf, I cannot guarantee his safety, nor will I be responsible for his fate.
Yeah.
Because
he's other. I mean, yeah, that scene is just like a perfect example of that. Like, he's not part of me and my people, so I don't care. He's less important, less worthy of, you know, protection or whatever. Yeah. So that's othering.
Well, and the dwarves and the elves other themselves, you know, like dwarves hate the elves hate the dwarves for whatever reasons, but a large part of that is like
the elves didn't help.
Yeah, but also but they're othering each other.
Right.
Still.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, we don't need to help them. Plus, there's a big dragon in there.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. So that, like, the ethical thing that I wanted us to play with is just the ethics of grudges.
Yeah.
Because in the context of othering, grudges are among the most damaging interpersonal things that we can have. Most of us have been hurt or wronged or damaged in some way by someone else. But I think in terms of the way that human beings are wired, the odds that was done intentionally are very small. So in the case of Elf King guy and Thorin Oakenshield's dad guy, whoever those people were, the elves not stepping in was a choice the king made that I think the Dwarven king would have made the same choice. He sees this is basically a suicide mission going in there.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do, so I'm choosing to protect my people, and I'm sad, and you can kind of see it on his face. Like, he's regretful that he's not going to help and can't help, but at the same time, you know, he's got to protect his people. And so, in our case, in our lives, I don't actually know what value holding a grudge has. I guess it maybe potentially protects you from future harm from that person, maybe. But just in terms of the psychological cost on us of holding a grudge, I don't feel like we should ever hold a grudge. I feel like we need to let go. We need to forgive because, there are two people in my life that have damaged me significantly or my family significantly. Holding on to that for years, decades, does nothing to them. It doesn't fix the damage. It doesn't repair anything. It doesn't heal me. It doesn't heal them. It's just a burden. It's just a darkness that is getting in the way of everything else that I could do or whatever. So, yeah, so we just need to move on. Like, I've moved on. I've forgiven them. They probably don't even remember who I am.
Right, but that is easier said than done.
Right.
Because I'm thinking about things in my life where it's like, yeah, but look at this person who, to me, they have hurt me or wronged me or whatever.
Right.
But it seems like we're getting rewarded in other parts of their,
Sure.
That's like part of it too. It's like, well, like they did an awful thing, we'll say, but it's like, how come they get this, or how come other people really like them or stuff? That's the hard part. Where
right, but what I'm saying is that doesn't.
Yeah, I know.
Do you
but
any
I'm
good?
saying
That doesn't do them any harm.
And maybe
it does you harm.
It does. Yeah, it's the famous saying: holding a grudge is like drinking poison and waiting the other person to die.
Yep. It's true.
It's just harder, easier said than done.
Admittedly.
Yeah.
It took me a very long time.
Yeah. I think time does help with that. I mean, maybe I'm being stubborn, but it's like, all right, can't enough time.
Sure.
Don't need to talk to
that person forever, and that'll harm them, and they'll be sorry. Yeah. No, I get it. Like, it is very hard. Like, one of the two people for me, I still have a hard time trusting people in authority over me because of this person. But me hating that person or, whatever does it, there's no point in it.
Yeah.
And so I've got to deal with the aftermath, but that person has moved on, and I needed to move on too.
I guess it gets tricky when the aftermath is like, oh, what about those benefits I missed out on or something?
Right.
Like they took a thing from me or whatever. Yeah. That's where it gets tricky.
Well,
not tricky. It's just like I said. It's like your reality is what it is. You can't change it, but it's better if you don't let it poison you.
Yeah. So from most ethical schools, grudges don't make any sense.
Yeah.
A utilitarian, it doesn't make sense. From loyalist, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the only one maybe would be Darwinian, but we've talked about the kind of moral bankruptcy of Darwinian ethics. And even from a Darwinian standpoint, the only way a grudge would make sense is if you were planning vengeance and you were going to go and, destroy that person. Yeah. That would be Darwinian ethics. But I think most of us are not interested in vengeance. We just want them to be sorry or say they're sorry or whatever.
Yeah.
And, for a lot of them, they're not going to do it because they don't even remember. And potentially, most likely, I would be willing to bet the vast majority it wasn't even intentional. Like, they didn't harm us on purpose. It was just them trying to do their best, and it inadvertently wounded us. So I guess for me, and kind of the message I took ethically out of this movie is we just got to move on. It doesn't do Thorin Oakenshield any good to harbor a grudge against the elves. Like, it does a lot of harm. I'm sure we're going to get to that. But same thing for us. So that's all I got for The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. So,
hey, I thought we had some good stuff to say about The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey.
Sure.
I mean,
it's melodramatic.
The desolation of Smaug.
Why did they say Smaug?
I don't know. It should be Smog. That's way cooler.
I'm pretty sure it was Smog, but maybe I've been mispronouncing it.
Maybe it's you. Yeah.
It probably is.
And then we have, the third movie's called?
You said it earlier.
The Hobbit, Battle of the Five Armies. That'll be fun.
You said that with a straight face. That was impressive.
I already said I think this one's the best one, so there's that for
is
you.
Terrifying. I mean, 6 more hours of my life are going to be worse than that.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Anyway, thanks for listening to the Hobbit episode.
Yeah.
Hey, if you have thoughts about Jason already hating the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and you have counter arguments, because I told a friend of mine, and he's like, well, I could argue and prove that he's just objectively wrong about those. And I was texting my brothers because they're asking if you were watching this, and like, oh, is he gonna watch the extended editions? And I was like, I'm lucky if he's watching this on ×2 speed, okay?
You know what? You demonstrated that I was wrong with the Marvel movies, a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
You did not demonstrate that I was wrong with the Star Wars movies, but I'm open to being wrong.
That's fair.
I am not a closed-minded person, but I do have exacting standards, and it's possible that in the 20 years since I've last watched the Lord of the Rings movies that I have matured to the point that I can now appreciate what I couldn't appreciate as a 25-year-old.
That's crazy.
It's possible. We'll see.
I'm excited for you to watch these just to kind of like make you suffer, but
Aha! I knew it.
But
I knew it was just sadism.
The Lord of the Rings movies, that's something special though, and that like I don't even. I'll be upset if you don't like those. Anyway,
I've never actually seen you upset.
I get upset all the time.
I don't remember ever. So it might be kind of scary. I might just say I love them because I don't want to.
Anyway.
Cool.
This is, yeah.
Well, we'll see you next week for the next installment of boring, slogging film making. And
anyway, we love you.
We do love you.
Think critically.
Bye.
Bye.